Today we have our great faculty in Magnimind Academy is going to talk about, practices, interview practices, and data analysis and business analysis. So Dr. Jeran is again co-founder of Magnimind Academy. He's faculty in San Jose State University, and he used to be faculty in Santa Clara University and KAIST University in Korea. And he's doing a lot of different research, especially medical AI with Stanford and different medical AI companies. And Sami, he's expert in data science and alumni, MIT alumni, and again, data science and business analyst. And he's working in C3 AI. C3 AI is a company, they really do work for so many companies and focus and specialize in AI. He's done so many projects there. So it would be a fantastic candidate, and he hires people in that space. And then he will also share his own view, experiences, and technical insights. Dr. Jeran and Sami, when you guys ready, you're welcome to start.
Cool. Okay. Thank you, Murat, for the introduction. We have some slides that myself and Dr. Jaran will just walk through, interview process, try to give you all our insights. And I think with that, let's just get started. Cool. For some reason, the questions pop up for me too, but let's see. Okay. Are the slides visible just before I keep going?
They are visible.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so like Murat was saying, I think goal is to just give the preparation. I think that kind of bias towards experienced candidates is definitely there in the industry. So we'll give some tips, and that's just for getting the interview. Then once you get the interview, we'll try to really prepare you as best we can in a 60-minute workshop of what to expect, what type of questions, how you might think about approaching your answer, and hopefully just help as much as possible. Cool. So just to cover it again, we want you to completely understand what to expect in data analytics, business analytics, these type of job interview functions, know how to plan and prepare for interviews. So there's some resources that we'll be sharing, and ultimately just feel confident, right? So you can land the interview, ace it, and get the job you want. So there are some examples. I'm actually going to skip through this right now. We're going to cover example questions like this later in the section, but I just wanted to flash a bit of a flavor of what that might look like. For example, a problem-solving question where they'll give you in the interview maybe 30, 45, 60 minutes to walk through a problem-solving case study like this. And again, just flashing it, we'll dive into more detail in a bit. And again, I think 60 minutes won't make anyone an expert in the interview, but I think it'll illuminate the path and make you feel confident of what is expected and how to get there. Cool. So let's just jump into, I think, a part that is maybe underrated and overrated at the same time. So resume. I like to think of the whole process that many people are going through. You're trying to find an analytics job. I mean, it starts with the application. That's the top of the funnel. And then from there, okay, next step would be a recruiter reaches out to you. And then suddenly, your interview goes on from there. There's many more steps until the offer stage is reached. But at the beginning stage, I find a lot of people a lot of people I know as well are very stuck in that stage, not even able to get contacted by a recruiter. And there's potentially a few different reasons for that. One of the biggest is your marketing document, which is your resume. And I really think everyone should think of it that way. This is your marketing document. You have one page and about 10 seconds to make the impression. So hopefully we can give some tips to help do that. I think format wise, um, in this field, technology, analytics, simple one pager, not any fancy formatting. You can grab a template from Harvard or MIT is, and they're free and accessible, is sufficient. When I've talked to recruiters, they actually prefer a stable format because it's easy for them to scan, right? They're used to a certain, let's say, format of document. If you give something completely different, they don't know where to look. And again, they have very little bandwidth for one single resume. So unless this is the greatest resume of all time, if they don't know how to look through it, it's probably just going to get passed by. Similarly, maybe one thing that is good to focus on is pretend you're not you, you're some third party observer. Try to be the recruiter. You're looking at the job description and you're looking at this resume. And is there, imagine if you're familiar with like embeddings and cosine similarity, is there like a 99% match between these things? That's really what they're looking for. And a lot of it actually just comes down to simple keywords. We want someone with title data analyst or business analyst or analytics, ideally multiple titles. And we want very clear examples of work. So I think the whole point here is, and this is the mistake I made when I was like earlier into this field, is I would just assume because I know myself and I know how my skills translate to the job, I would just assume the recruiter would make that leap. Oh, I did a software engineering internship and I'm applying to data science. Yeah, it's like transferable. I'll just write software engineer intern and they'll understand. And oh, I did like a entrepreneurial startup. Okay, I'll add that too. It shows I'm like well-rounded. Maybe these things are true, but then the recruiter is like, well, we need a data analyst, and I'm seeing somebody with software, entrepreneurship experience, and some other things. No thanks. So just some food for thought there of what the process is looking like. And it's really derived from the fact that there's hundreds of applications and resumes for any given job description at most of these companies. So they get to be very picky and they're going to look for, perfect exact matches. And one thing, let me see if I can quickly check the chat. Feel free to drop any questions. So right now I'm on a different laptop and I'm struggling very hard to figure out the logistics here, but okay, I think I finally got it. Cool. Maybe one way we can do it is this.
Yeah, there is one question, Sami. Is this what you are describing? Is it only for US or is it also for US and Europe as well? I
Yeah,
guess I guess the people are using the same tools, right? So recruiters in US or Europe are using the same tools.
yeah, agree.
Similar
Um,
to.
Similar, I mean, I have heard, I have no idea, I don't live in Europe, but I have heard that maybe in Europe they do sometimes expect to actually have a photo of you on your resume.
Yeah,
I have no idea. My advice is just figure out what the standards are in that region and just
yeah.
apply that standard. But otherwise, most of these things are the same. One other huge tip before I keep going, I need to close these polls. For the job hunt, I do want to skip to here. Okay, apply early and apply often. It's a low probability game we play for job applications, right? Any given application has like a single digit percentage point, maybe even less than single digit, right? Less than 1% of actually being seen and advanced to the next round. So yeah, it can feel like you apply to 100 jobs and you hear nothing back, right? That's just like the numbers at play here. But there are ways to put this more in your favor. I think there's two parts, which is obviously apply often. So get a big volume of applications out there. That's one. The other is apply early. And I think for this, I mean two things. Apply before you really need the job. So give yourself 3+ months for this process to play out. But more importantly, and again, I actually only really understood this not too long ago, Apply only to positions that have recently been listed. Mainly because even though the listing is up and it's been there for 2 weeks, it's for all intents and purposes closed. They've received so many applicants already in that week or 2 weeks. No one is looking at any further applicant. Even if it's the best applicant in the world, it's functionally closed. And it's like first in, first out, right? FIFO. So you want to be as early as possible in the queue because the recruiter is going to look at the first N people in this queue. And then their target is to maybe have 5 viable candidates from that N and move them forward. As soon as they have that, like the queue is done. No one else is moving. So you really need to make sure you're there early, else you're really disqualifying yourself from the jump. And yeah, I definitely know that's not maybe that's not common knowledge, but it is how things are working, and it can be to your advantage to know that and just find recently posted jobs. So likewise, another way to help deal with that large queue is referrals. All right, that's a separate candidate pool. It can help you obviously get into someone's actually reviewing your resume, reach out to people. Super, super helpful. I think the majority of hires come from some type of connection. So definitely use that to your advantage. One just final tip, if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn, you can feel free to just be straightforward, like, hey, I would appreciate a referral. This is why I think I'm a good fit. Here's my resume for your review. Simple as that. Yeah, I think, at least for me personally, I'm super okay with the transparency. And lastly, there's a lot of tools out there. I like this one, no affiliation. I just like them. It's simplified.jobs. I think it's simplified.ai now, like with everything, .ai. It's a really great extension to just automatically fill out those same fields you always have to paste that are basically a copy of your resume. Cool. It basically auto does it for you, saves time on each application. So that can be super helpful. Cool. Okay. I want to jump into mock interview questions. Maybe let me check the chat. If there's been anything.
One thing, Semi, when posting information on your resume, so there are a couple of things. One is keeping your resume as wide as possible in terms of your skill sets so that you can catch as many items from the job description as you can. But on the other hand, posting anything that you cannot explain when you receive a question on during the interview, during the technical phone interview. So they may ask questions based on what you put on your resume. If you cannot answer those questions, then it's going to be a different level of problem. So especially if you are using a referral, so I heard this by experience. You may receive hear from a job from a recruiter as close as the same day. So this happens. So sometimes next day. So they call you to schedule an interview. So in that case, be very, very careful about what you are posting on your resume, because this may haunt you if you're not listing things that you actually know in your resume.
Very spot on. And even myself, as I conduct interviews, if it's on your resume, it's fair game. So, I understand in, let's say, data science, we can use models without necessarily needing to know the details of them, but we should, right? That should be the standard we strive for. You should know the tools you're using. And if someone, let's say, writes, a random forest, I use a random forest model. Okay, fair game for me to dig into their understanding of what is a random forest, as just one example. And if you're not prepared, then it just doesn't show that you're very versed in this field. I also do see a question around, not necessarily having direct job experience, which is a fantastic question. We all need to start from somewhere. It's totally fine to, if you don't have job experiences, put projects as experiences, right? Have an experience section and then say, hey, this is my project. I operated in the capacity as like data analytics, business analytics, whatever it might be. And then fill out the points just like you would for a job, making it clear it's a project. But the point is to show you have experience. My insight, and then the final part of this question is, should we say we're aspiring data analyst, some X, Y, Z position? I would probably, I'm not an expert in this, but I think I would avoid that. I think on your resume, you want to show you have the experience. People are looking for experienced professionals. There is a smaller appetite, unfortunately, these days for people who aren't already a professional in their field. But if you have the experience in projects, just, yeah, you're a data analyst. This is my experience. And no need to undermine or undersell your skill set. That's my advice there. Again, marketing document. Market yourself well. Cool. So let's do this. I'll jump into slideshows. Let's walk through some type of interview questions. And I would love for this to be interactive. So, if in the chat, is it going to come up? Okay, perfect. I would love if in the chat, there's an option to respond to hosts and panelists or to everybody. Respond to whoever you feel comfortable. But as we go through these, interaction would be great. We can try to provide some feedback based on your answers. It's a great way just for you to check yourself. Like, how's my understanding of these things? One super common one that I think people always undersell, but companies actually really do care about is the behavioral questions, right? These are just questions about your experiences, about you, what makes you tick, what have you experienced so far. There's many different flavors of these, but the general approach for all of them, I think anytime someone asks you a vague situational, like, tell me about a time you improved the process. Tell me about a time you had a conflict. Tell me about a time you showed leadership. Like, all of these questions, you should be able to reach into your bag of experiences and give a situation in which you demonstrated this. That's the most strong form of evidence, and it's really what they're looking for. So this actually has a name, if you're not already familiar with it. It's called the STAR format. It's an acronym for anytime you have these questions to phrase your response in this type of situation, right? Where you start with the situation, like, okay, tell me about a process, a time you improved the process. First, describe the situation, right? Provide context of your example, basically framing it so people understand what you're about to say next. And there's some example of what that might look like. The next letter would be T, task, right? Explain the actual task or challenge involved. What was your role, right? What did you do? So let's say in this example, you say you were some business analyst at some corporation and your task was to analyze a sales process that can be improved. Just generic example. My responsibility was specifically to gather data on the current one, identify pain points, and try to come up with some recommendations to improve it. Okay, cool. Now me as the interviewer, I understand. Next part would be you framed it for me. You told me your scope. Now you tell me what you did specifically, right? This is where you can share and brag about all the cool things you've done. You did a review with some SMEs. You identified these very interesting areas. You found this bug. You found this insight, all these potential interesting things you did. And then the last letter R would be the result. What happened, right? That's really, especially in this field of, being an analyst, being in analytics, your prime goal is to deliver results through insights, right? Through these data skills, through knowing Python and SQL and being able to sift through data. Companies want you to be able to distill that into something meaningful that helps the business. So you are a key, let's say, advisor of the business. That's why the result part is super, super interesting. Could you actually take this data, messy data, which all of us who've worked in data know it can be very messy, it can be very hard to distill insights. You can get lost in the sauce, get lost in the analysis. Are you able to go through all of that and share a concrete result, actionable results from your analysis and from what you did? So that's really what you want to show off in the end. And then ideally put some numbers to it, right? So because of my work, everything I did, within 6 months, the sales team saw a 10% increase in revenue. Let me just look through the chat.
Yeah, Semi, as you're looking at the chat, just a couple of things. So there are two types of people who will answer these questions. One already has worked as a data analyst to some capacity in a company. So for that person, it's going to be easier to talk about the experience. So my suggestion is make sure that you put into writing what you did first, and you can use all these AI tools. So just take ChatGPT. Can you turn what I just described into a step-by-step start type of response? That's the first step, and then second step is please practice. So when you practice, do not just write. So writing and talking are two different things. So when you are talking, you need to keep a coherent line of thought so that you can express what you are thinking. So maybe you can simply use again AI tools like ChatGPT's. What is that? You can talk to a GPT and then make it respond back to you. So this way you can practice this behavioral start question. So this is for the person who already have some experience, and there are some people who never had an experience. So for these applicants, my suggestion is do not talk about projects that are like cookbook projects that are already studied by millions of people millions of times. So my suggestion is please sit down and then think about what is really interesting to you. If you are into sports, something related to sports or music, something related to music or movies, something that is interesting to you, you can come up with a data project, a side project for yourself that is interesting to you. You can spend 1 2 months on that project, and then you can build some personal experience on that project, and then you can talk about that project you can even write that into your resume rather than any project you did with your instructor in a boot camp like data science boot camp.
Yeah, very spot on. Definitely when I review projects and I see them, I much more appreciate depth than breadth. I'd rather you have one project that you went really deep in and it can talk to me for half an hour on, than five projects that, were a week and were these like cookie cutter, in data science, it's like a Titanic problem or the MNIST data set or these other type of generic things. Try to avoid those because it doesn't really show your depth. It actually kind of signals that you're a beginner because those are beginner uh, problems. So show ones where you've really gone deep, and that will be much more impressive. Another tip, by the way, before I move on from STAR, this one I got from the book Cracking the Coding Interview, but it applies beyond coding. It's a general behavioral interview tip. Like what Yasin was saying, you really want to have these things prepared, right? You want to kind of cache your experiences before the interview because kind of the most frustrating thing is you're not able to think of a good example on the spot for any type of question that could be asked. So the way to avoid this is just make a grid, right? Rows and columns. Columns should be different experiences or projects. So maybe work experience A, work experience B, project C, project D. And each row is a different experience in the project. One row might be a failure you had or a lesson learned. Another would be a success. Another would be, I don't know, like the most interesting technical challenge. Come up with like 5 to 10 of these rows that generally track to behavioral questions. And what that means is you're now going to have an example for every experience, for every flavor of a behavioral question that you might get. you'll just be ready. And you don't need to go into super detail, but you'd be like, oh yeah, I know in my project B, I remember I had this challenge and this is perfect for this question, and you'll be able to easily answer. So try that out. It helped me a lot. Cool. Let's go on to, of course, an extremely common and the bread and butter of analytics, SQL, SQL. I think it's very common, right, that in your interview, you'll be writing SQL, whether offline in some type of online assessment, maybe they give you a hacker rank question, or online, right, with an interviewer writing SQL live against some question you'll be seeing there for the first time. Of course, it's very nerve-wracking. It's stressful to write code and to write SQL on the spot, but a lot of the time that is the expectation. The good news is it's just a matter of practice, both practicing SQL such that you're skilled at it enough and practicing in a real interview sandbox environment with the time pressure, with ideally a mock interviewer, right? Somebody actually giving you the question, watching you code, being on the other side. It definitely increases the stress by another level than when you're inside your living room on your own. So if you really want to be prepared, that's how you take it to the next level. With that being said, here's one example. And if actually you have some solutions, feel free to write them in the chat and we can go back and forth on that. This would be an example of a more easy one, right? So let's say this, you're given the premise, okay, we have this table of world that has these columns. We're going to say a country is big if it has at least 3 million square kilometer area, or it has a population of at least 25 million. I want you to write a SQL query to report the name, population, and area of the big countries. You can return the table in any order. So feel free to go through this. While we do that, it's generally a good practice to, obviously you can't really do it now, but walk through your thought process before you write any code. Genuinely half the problem here, or generally half the battle, is showing good communication. I'm looking for somebody who is actually strong in telling me their thought process and is receptive to having a conversation about this problem, not just writing the code right away with minimal communication. It can also help to ask for clarification, right? Do you understand the problem fully? If not, ask me, the interviewer. For example, one thing that's very common is how should we treat missing values? Right? What if area is missing? Does that count? You can just ask for that clarification. What if population is missing? Or some other types of these examples.
Yeah, as the audience is working on the problem, just one thing about these kind of problems. So there are hundreds of, not maybe thousands, hundreds of questions, problems, easy, medium, hard, difficult problems already available on different platforms. You can search them and find them for free, or you can, get it from a platform by subscription. So I know people, I know students who worked really hard, went through these hundreds of problems, practiced them each one of them one by one, maybe multiple times, which I really applaud. But it's very difficult for many of us who may be already working in a job. So my suggestion is for these coding problems, be it SQL or Python or R, uh, group them, so categorize them, and try to focus on each category. Try to understand how you can address any problem coming from that category rather than memorizing and going through hundreds of problems. Again, these are maybe different ways of studying these questions, but my suggestion is categorize the problems and then understand each category separately.
Exactly. Spot on. Yeah, you can do hundreds, but also you could probably distill it into the main concepts. Uh, and especially going by category is very, very helpful. Okay, so just to kind of walk through this, I did see some good responses from some participants. They look pretty great, so that's great to see. Again, this one's more on the easy side, just really testing select and filtering logic, right? So you'd want to select a name, population, and area from the table world where we meet these conditions. Either area is greater than 3 million or population is greater than 25 million. And it says we don't have to return in any order. Great. Now, there are definitely ways this will get much more complicated in a real interview where you have multiple tables, where I want to share different flavors of questions. So I don't want to spend too much time on a second SQL, but joining is almost certainly a concept you will face. So that's where things can get a little bit more complicated. And then there are for sure more advanced examples where you really have to know window functions, CTEs, group by, having, all of these common SQL concepts you should expect to be tested on and to be strong on, and that'll make you the most prepared. Awesome. So that would be the SQL round. And just for context, you might only get asked to do SQL once, right? Maybe in the initial technical screen. Once you've done it once, it's like, okay, we understand you passed the bar for SQL. That's fine. Now it's really about understanding your ability to really perform as a data analyst, which is you get some ambiguous problem that involves data in any capacity, and you're able to break it down into meaningful steps and solve it with a concrete result. That's really what it takes. And it's much easier said than done, right? It's definitely not as easy as it looks. We all know data is very messy. There's many ways to aggregate and many different tools that are required, all of that good stuff. One more thought before I forget this. You may be tempted to use AI tools in the interview. I know this is a thing now. I would really just recommend not doing it. Um, A, I've seen it in interviews. It's not as slick as you think. It's quite obvious when a candidate is using AI. And then also you risk, I know some companies, I mean, if it is obvious, they might actually bar you and ban you from interviewing there again, right? Blacklist, they call it. So you don't want to put yourself in that position. Ultimately, you want to make sure you're just qualified for the job, right? If you get it, you get it. If not, so be it. So just a little bit of 2 cents from the other side of the interview. Then with that being said, let's go into a very common one. Yeah, problem solving. Let's do this case. Okay, we have 45, 60 minutes. We're going to walk through this case study. Right, you're working at my social media company. We have a new recommendation system to improve the videos shown to users in their feed. Right now, if you're more on like the data science and analytics side, this might be a question you see because you might be asked, how would you design the A/B test to evaluate if the new recommendation system is indeed better than the old one? Right? So maybe we have, TikTok 2 or some TikTok competitor. We have video recommendation system. It gets millions of users every single day. How do you think about breaking down this problem? I'll let people kind of digest it. We have a framework here. I think for all of these, I'll just preface it by saying there's ways to prepare. There is a framework you can kind of apply to all of these for the type of question. So if it's A/B testing, right? I think the biggest part is probably spend 5 to 10 minutes just clarifying all the assumptions you're making, the considerations you're making, your understanding of the problem. Please avoid the desire to jump straight into solutioning, I highly recommend make sure you understand the problem because it'll make everything else super easy. If you know you have 30 minutes, an hour, spend that time understanding the problem. It'll really help you out. Now, one thing here is with A/B testing, I think uh, and Dr. Sharan will have a lot more insights on this, but really the bread and butter is defining your splits, right? Who is going to be your A and your B groups, right? How do you think about that to make it as fair as possible? The rest is still important, right? Like, what is your hypothesis? What is your sample size? What are your criticality thresholds? How long do you think about running it, et cetera, et cetera. But that is more mechanical, and a lot of the gold and the bread and butter is in what are your groups? And let me just take a peek at the chat. Nice. I'm seeing some great responses as well to the actual previous star questions. Yeah, I see from Oman. I think that's a great response. Very, very clear, right? You saw a process that was inefficient. You made it more efficient. That's great initiative. I'm also seeing from Brian, so should we not emphasize the mechanics for this? No, definitely emphasize the mechanics, right? And always kind of ask the interviewer, I can go into more detail. Do you want me to? I think that's the safest and best approach because, the interviewer kind of has a roadmap of where they want this to lead. Before you go too deep in another path, sanity check that that's what they want. Because if it's not, they'll say, no, no, that's fine. Let's talk more about this. That's the best way to keep your sanity. But yes, you should show that, I understand p-values, I understand power, I understand control groups, I understand minimum detectable effect, all these things.
Yeah, once the problem is posted, right? So the first thing is we come up with a hypothesis. The next thing is in your mind, if you follow the path to solution, right? So once you come up with a hypothesis, like in this case, one is better than the other, then the next question is what makes one better than the other? So what do you think is the metric for that? So how do you measure better than worse, right? So then you begin to talk about, I think a lot of times for this kind of problems, coming up with a good metric is very critical. And also, we don't have too many metrics. So you should be familiar with like what is conversion rate, what is click-through rate. And then depending on the context, the problem, number of customers on board or number of customers leaving or time spent on the platform or engagement between the users. So depending on the context, you can come up with, I think if you can come up with a really good metric for that context, that will be very eye-catching. And then the next thing is, as Semi was explaining, coming up with the groups. How do you come up with groups, control and then the test group, right? So how do you come up with those groups? How do you assign, in this case, let's say individuals, people, users into these groups? So you may receive some questions on that about randomization. It's just randomization within a geographical area enough, or you may randomize areas as well, like not just California, but California and Texas. So you may receive some questions again, depending on context. I went through these kind of questions before, and you may receive questions that you never had before, actually. So be ready for that.
Correct, exactly. And I think even, especially if it's a genuinely different kind of problem-solving question, really, I'm curious to see your problem-solving approach, right? Like how you just think through a problem. Because of course, no one expects you to just have the solution at the top of your mind. If actually you do, then the question is, it's a bad interview question. We just want to see how are you thinking about it? Okay, what is the key metric? Well, maybe clicks are a good one, but clicks, is that really what we're trying to optimize? Do we care more about how much time the user is spending on our application? Walk through that trade-off and thought process. Control groups, can we randomize? Is there going to be some confounders? Are we going to violate the independence of groups if we split them up in way A versus way B? So it really just shows your thought process and also, how much you know about this field. Cool. We maybe have time for around one more question. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the other problem solving. There are some case studies that I want to walk through that are also very common. But okay, not A/B testing. This is also a super common one in analytics. I'm just going to blast through it. All these companies have dashboards for their millions of users and their applications getting a ton of volume. Suddenly, we're a ride-hailing company and we notice that, oh, shoot, in San Francisco, our ETA has skyrocketed by 5 minutes. How do you investigate this? And of course, this is a very ambiguous problem, but just to blast through it again, right? Clarification. You really want to understand, okay, we're in San Francisco, it's ride hailing. Is this normal? Can we compare this to previous trends? When we say ETA, how are we actually calculating that? And then there are a few different flavors and ways you can dissect this. So common basis, right? Is this expected? Did they release a new feature? Maybe they released a net new recommendation algorithm that might have caused this, or a matching algorithm. Did other metrics change that are expected to? Maybe ETA went up because a new routing model has been deployed. Or maybe they're a common, maybe it's like the NBA finals in San Francisco and the game just ended, right? So obviously there's a huge increase in ETA. You want to be able to pull apart these threads. Beyond that, it's always good to look at the time dimension in data and look at the aggregation levels. So is this a normal seasonal effect, right? If you look at the time series of ETA, what does that look like? Is it gradual or happening all at once? Similarly, can you group by types of users? Maybe this is happening for a type of user. Maybe this is happening for a certain area in San Francisco, if you group by geography, and so on and so on and so on. There's so many ways you can segment this and just try to figure out what is happening, what is the root cause at the end of the day of this effect, and ultimately, what should we do about it? That's your final recommendation.
Yeah, we may not have a right answer, right? So for this, like definite answer for this. So your interviewer is going to actually measure how you are approaching the problem. So that's what they want to see. So how can you look at a problem from different angles? Are you considering all aspects of the problem? Are you coming up with some measurable metrics to see if there is a problem, right? So there is no definite answer in this case. It depends. More important thing is how you describe what you are thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Process in these cases over the final result. This can go in so many ways. They just want to know how you think. Cool. So let's do this. We have one more flavor of questions that are more case study oriented. I'm deciding right now if I want to do one or two. Let's do number one. So this is also a very common, might be a 60-minute interview that combines SQL and these type of problem solving questions. Premise will be given to you. Okay, you're a business analyst, data analyst at ShopSmart. We're an online retailer. And we have a marketing manager. They really want to understand sales trends because they have to plan the next promotion campaign, right? What should we promote? What is our next advertising or marketing campaign? And they'll give you all the tables you may have available to you: customers, products, orders, order items. We can spend more time walking through the tables and as well in your interview. That's totally fair. Get familiar with them. clarify your assumptions. But then from there may be a series of questions, or it might be even more ambiguous. But let's just say with some straightforward business questions. Question number one, can you tell me which product categories generated the most revenue in the past month? And the expectation will be potentially to write, SQL or at least pseudo SQL to answer this type of question. While if you're happy to, or if you're interested to, feel free to try to respond to some of these questions in the chat. We don't need to go through all of them. But again, maybe who are our top 10 customers by total spending? What's the average order value by country? Which products are frequently purchased together? That one sounds more complicated. But these are very common questions that stakeholders may have, you may have in your analysis. Can you manipulate the data through SQL or through pandas? That's also totally fine to get that answer. Right, so this would just potentially be one example of getting top revenue categories, right? We'll have multiple joins involved here. We have 4 tables. They each have foreign keys to other tables. So you'll really want to show your understanding and then, slicing and dicing it as needed. As usual, just like with SQL questions, as always, show your understanding, clarify your assumptions. Of course, like asking maybe 4 of these more heavy type of SQL questions in just 30 minutes would be probably on the very hard side. I don't think it would be quite this difficult, but just giving you a flavor of what it might look like.
Yeah, for this type of a question, when you are given the table, right? So you need to first of all recognize how these tables are related to each other. Like in this case, customer is related to orders. Orders are related to products through order items table. So once you recognize how the tables are related to, then you can go back and then start working on the problem. So in your mind, so that the relationships are set. And then you can begin writing your code. And then when you're writing the code, of course, it's very obvious that you need to make some table joins here, right?
Exactly. So hopefully that gives us one type of flavor of case study question. At the end of the day, the interviewer may take this in many, many different directions. Remember that we started in this case with the idea of understanding recent sales trends to plan the next promotional campaign. So it might be, instead of questions being given to you, a more likely scenario or equally likely scenario is they would ask, what questions, what would you want to ask? What would you want to pull from the data to answer this, right? You are reporting directly to this manager. What would you recommend? What trends are you seeing? And then at the end of this, ideally, you should have some recommendations. I think you should focus on customers in this region because this product is trending upwards, or the average selling price is having these characteristics. The possibilities here are limitless, but you can have data, and you should have data to back up your recommendations. Loyalty program, customized marketing campaigns based on their spending patterns. Maybe you're seeing a big one, frequently co-purchased products. This is your time to show off your technical and business understanding as a data analyst, business analyst.
So Semi, if you could go back 2 slides, like to the beginning of the question. Yeah. So this is the main question. So that's the main question you will receive in the interview. I think the next slide where the list of the questions is actually part of your answer. So I would ask these questions I will look for the answers to these questions to answer the basic question, which is coming up with the recommendations, because my answers to these business questions is going to shape my recommendation. So I would be more interested to hear about your response as in terms of these business questions, rather than how you can actually write the code to answer this question. So we already tested that with SQL code. We already tested that.
Yeah, very true. Cool. So I think we're at the 1 hour mark right now. I'm glad we actually did cover all the core concepts that I wanted to go through. So hopefully that was very helpful. Hopefully it makes it more clear what, you may experience in the full end-to-end interview process. Um, yeah, and thank you all for attending, for staying with us, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I wish you all the best. Good luck in your job search. Hopefully, Semi and I will be together again in another workshop like this one.
Definitely. And again, yeah, feel free to drop your LinkedIn. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you'd like. Always happy to. I'm
Thank
seeing a
you.
question for recordings. So I believe this is published to both Magnimind YouTube and LinkedIn. So feel free to visit the page. I'm confident you'll see the streams of this exact session there. And yeah, maybe you want to ask yourself the questions, pause the video, pause us, try and answer yourself, and go from there.
Right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Cool. Bye bye.